It's been another eventful month here in Brisbane, and of course the Brisbane Channel is here to make sure you're across not just the big stories, but also some of the smaller things that may have slipped under your radar. This video is sponsored by local company YB Painting Services, but more on that later. Of course, the biggest news this month is that Queensland has a new LNP majority government, with David Crisafulli at the helm as State Premier. That's all I really need to say about that, but the Brisbane Channel will be keeping a close eye on how the lives of people here in Brisbane are affected by this change over the next 4 years. The first update is nothing new for Brisbane at this time of year. The weather has been crazy. In November, we've had both the coolest November day in 12 years and the warmest November night in 16 years. We've had storms, hail, flash flooding, even a mini water spout thing next to Kangaroo Point. On the 14th, for example, there were 215,000 lightning strikes recorded overnight. But it was 2 weeks before that something happened that I absolutely had to share here on the Brisbane Channel. A lightning strike led to a power outage on the Ipswich to Sunshine Coast train line. One train was less than a kilometre from arriving at Beerburrum Station when it lost power and ground to a halt. Thanks to Redditor, not a medical doctor, for taking these photos inside the train and of the evacuation. Passengers were escorted along the tracks to Beerburrum Station, where rail buses took them for the rest of their journey. The next few updates are proposed changes about how you'll get around Brisbane into the future. With the Brisbane Metro buses coming soon, and don't worry, we'll get to that as well, Brisbane City Council have redesigned the bus network with the aim of making buses more frequent and reliable, less crowded, and expanding the area they're accessible from. In the first stage, which focuses on the inner city and southeastern corridor, 12 routes have been redesigned to end at metro and busway stations, and 5 brand new routes have been added. Route 26 from Garden City to Royal Brisbane Women's Hospital via Woolloongabba and the Valley, P109 from Acacia Ridge to the city via Ipswich Road, 127 from Indooroopilly to Fairfield Gardens via Yeronga, 182 from Garden City to Holland Park West via Wishart and Mansfield, and 197 from South Brisbane to the city. Other routes will be combined or divided, and some will be removed. And some peak time only services will become all-day services. Also, the free bus loop, Route 86, will be scrapped by the end of this year. There's no specified date for the rollout of these changes, but the Brisbane Channel will keep you in the loop, so make sure you're subscribed and have all notifications enabled. Many of these changed bus lines are designed to work in conjunction with the Metro bus network, and that's something we really need to talk about. The Metro was originally proposed in 2016 by then Lord Mayor Graham Quirk. Ta-da! The trackless rubber tyre metro system would include construction of an underground station under the Cultural Centre at a total cost of $1.54 billion. Long story short, the proposal was changed to what we have now, partly to cut costs, with the bus version quoted at $944 million and expected to be ready in 2023. Well, the latest update this month has reported the budget as having blown out to $1.55 billion, actually more expensive than the original version, and the buses won't be running until sometime in 2025. Since all of those other altered bus routes are meant to coincide with the opening of the Metro, that's pushed everything back to 2025. And all of that isn't all that's been delayed. Smart ticketing allows people using public transport to use their credit card, debit card, or smart device to pay for public transport without needing a Go card. It's now available to full fare passengers on South East Queensland trains and ferries, as well as 6 bus line operators. But this month it was confirmed that smart ticketing would not be rolled out to Brisbane City Council's buses until sometime in 2025. Brisbane City Council's 1,200 plus buses make up nearly half of all buses in the South East Queensland bus network. Not only has no specified timeline been announced, but, like the Metro, costs have exceeded the original budget. The smart ticketing system rollout was meant to cost $371 million, but the state budget this year has allocated an additional $22.8 million. Of course, you don't need smart ticketing or a Go card for the City Hopper ferry. It's always been a great way to explore the city for free, but the city hoppers' days may be numbered. With the Kangaroo Greenpoint Bridge set to open on December 15, the way people move between the city and Kangaroo Point will change. In anticipation of this, Brisbane City Council is considering changes to the ferry network. On the 17th, community consultation closed on a proposal to remove the city hoppers that they said were infrequent, often full and slow, and introduce higher frequency cross-river ferries. With the 50-cent fares, there's now very little difference between taking a city cat and a city hopper, so maybe saying goodbye to the city hoppers isn't such a bad thing. And while we're on the topic of 50-cent fares, it came out this month that a panel established in 2019 to boost public transport patronage, support passengers financially, and set the foundation for network changes in preparation for the 2032 Olympics had proposed sweeping changes to how fares were charged. The proposed reforms were put aside and 50-cent fares introduced instead. Meeting slides released under the Right to Information laws reveal that the Public Transport Fares Advisory Panel drew largely from a report by the Federal Government's Productivity Commission, which stated that reducing fares has a very limited effect on public transport patronage and road congestion. That's really something for another video. I'll be doing a deep dive into Brisbane's public transport system, so make sure you're subscribing and keep an eye out for that one. Of course, active transport is an alternative for getting around Brisbane, and this month it was announced that Neuron would be taking over Beam's place as an option for those wanting to use a hired e-scooter. If you don't know why Beam got booted out of Brisbane, I talk about that in the September update video. If you're using active transport, you want to feel safe, and this month a coroner has recommended Brisbane City Council and the Transport Department conduct a review of the Brisbane metro area's traffic light systems. This comes after a 20-year-old cyclist was fatally hit by a bus in 2021 at a Woolloongabba intersection. Both the bus and the cyclist had been given a green light. Brisbane City Council is making the areas around schools safer through their Safer Schools Precincts program, and has this month announced the next 4 precincts to be made over, namely Kedron, Mansfield, Wynnum and Indooroopilly. Possible changes include adding pedestrian crossings, widening footpaths, expanding the 40 km/h zones, adding curbside drop-off and pick-up zones, and safe walking route pavement markings. Consultation is now open for the first at Kedron and closes on December the 6th. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the local Brisbane business YB Painting Services is this update's sponsor. When I need work done on my place, guaranteed this is who I'll be calling. Their professionalism and near-obsessive attention to detail is impressive, and with fixed pricing and a 5-year warranty on all their work, you can be sure there'll be no unpleasant surprises. If you're thinking of having some painting done, you'll get a 10% discount as a viewer of the Brisbane Channel. Just scan this QR code to find out how to claim your 10% discount. Okay, now back to the update. With the 63% increase in the number of Australians at risk of homelessness from 2016 to 2022, Brisbane is seeing increased numbers of homeless people camping in public parks. This month saw the establishment of a task force in Brisbane City to combat antisocial behaviour, such as drug use and fighting, and to direct residents to appropriate services. However, recent reports highlight the fact that many of these services are overwhelmed and unable to provide support at the levels needed. Meanwhile, up in Moreton Bay, the City Council has this month granted a 50-year peppercorn lease to 2 housing providers under their Housing and Homelessness Action Plan. Under the agreement, Brick Housing and Coast to Bay Housing Group will develop and manage social housing on council-owned land in Caboolture and Morayfield. Based on 2021 census data, the number of people experiencing homelessness in Moreton Bay increased by 90% over a 10-year period, and the number of people sleeping rough referred from council to support services has increased by 250% over the last 2 years. The land lease for social housing is just one of many endeavours to combat homelessness in Moreton Bay, but that's something for another video. Many women find themselves facing homelessness after fleeing domestic violence, and a new program in Logan is trying to address that. A new traineeship called Build and Breathe has been created by Karen Muras, who built her own tiny home after fleeing domestic violence herself. 10 women are currently undertaking the traineeship in Eagleby, where they'll develop construction skills while building tiny homes to house victims of domestic violence. In addition, the plan is for the residents to be put into a vendor finance program, where after renting for 10 years, the women will own their own home. Also announced for Logan this month is a new economic hub, which will offer essential employment and economic support services. The $14.5 million facility will provide services including job readiness and training, community connection programs, and support for local enterprises and business incubators. It's not expected to be finished until 2026, however. Illegal tobacco products made the news this month. Figures reported by the Brisbane Times revealed that in just 12 weeks from July, over 5.2 million cigarettes and 1.2 tonnes of loose tobacco were seized from Queensland retailers, along with 8,500 illegal vapes and 12,000 nicotine pouches, which cannot be legally bought or sold in Australia. This was after a crackdown which targeted about 440 tobacconists, gift shops, petrol stations and convenience stores. The Brisbane Times visited 10 retailers in Brisbane and found that all of them openly sold Manchester cigarettes, and many others sold illegal brands such as the Chinese Double Happiness smokes and imported Marlboro Reds and Winnie Blues. The annual ASMOFQ Queensland Resident Hospital Health Check was released this month, revealing that over a third of the 831 junior doctors surveyed experienced or witnessed bullying, discrimination, or harassment in hospitals. Also, just under half of them reported having been concerned about making a clinical error due to fatigue caused by their working hours. Here's how the 9 hospitals in Greater Brisbane fared in the report. The average overall grade for Queensland was C+, down slightly from last year's B-. In somewhat related news, Brisbane medical sites were the target of a $670,000 EFTPOS scam, but it was only found out by a lucky twist of fate.
Magravette Highway Patrol, okay, so you're under arrest at the moment for unlawful use of a motor vehicle.
A 38-year-old man was arrested at a Wishart fuel station after allegedly riding a stolen motorbike dangerously. This led to an investigation that led to him being charged with 41 offences, including break and enter, fraud, receiving tainted property, theft and drug possession. The man had allegedly broken into medical sites across Brisbane, stealing their EFTPOS terminals that were used to make fraudulent reimbursements to the tune of $670,000. The lesson here is if you're going to commit a smart crime, don't be dumb. Let's stick with the crime theme for a little bit. Notable events this month include the torching of a restaurant in West End when a stolen Isuzu D-Max smashed into Arabella's Middle Eastern restaurant at 3 a.m. on November 6. The vehicle was set on fire and 2 men were seen fleeing the scene in a white Falcon. The men are still at large. Even more tragic is the death of grandmother Rosemary Franzidis after being hit by a car stolen at gunpoint by a 16-year-old boy. It was the end of a spree of car thefts and attempted robberies across Brisbane and Moreton Bay by a 35-year-old Caboolture woman, a 21-year-old Annerley man, and the 16-year-old boy, also from Caboolture. All 3 have now been charged with a slew of offences. Meanwhile in Ipswich, a 17-year-old girl is set to be sentenced for allegedly driving without due care, leading to a collision with a ute. In the ute was passenger Hayley Lochisano, who was 26 weeks pregnant. The unborn baby was killed in the crash. This will be one of the first times Sophie's Law has been applied. Sophie's Law was passed in 2023 after years of campaigning by Sarah Milosevic after losing her own unborn daughter in a 2014 car crash. It recognises the death of an unborn child as an aggravating factor in a crime, which means the crime is seen as more serious in the eyes of the law. This month also saw Cooinda Early Learning in Caboolture fined $28,000 for leaving a child unattended on a bus in 2022. The 2-year-old had been picked up from her home, but left on the bus at the centre. Staff only realised she wasn't in the centre when one of her parents called to pass on a message. Thankfully, the child was unharmed. Kanga Enterprises, the owner of Cooinda, was fined, but had no conviction recorded. Also fined this month was the Eagleby company Asbestos Demolition Specialists and its director Anthony Palmer. In what has been called one of the worst ever illegal asbestos waste matters in Queensland, large amounts of asbestos-laden construction waste had been received on their site, located on the banks of the Albert River. According to the Department of Environment, Science and Innovation, The company had failed to comply with the department's statutory notices in 2020, 21 and 22. This month, the company was fined $400,000 and the director fined $100,000 with a 9-month suspended prison sentence. After all that heavy news, we need something to cheer us up. And one of Brisbane's biggest cultural exports, Bluey, now has her own tourist attraction here in Brisbane. The immersive experience on the North Shore takes you into Bluey's iconic Queenslander home, and as a bonus, 2 of the city's city cats have been turned into city dogs, and you can ride them all the way from the CBD to the North Shore Hamilton terminal. Tickets are $49.90 in off-peak and $64.90 in peak times, and there's only one price class, so no children or concession prices. Kids under 2 get in for free though. Bluey and her family should be careful though, as Queensland's Animal Welfare League has put out a critical alert. There's currently a serious canine Parvovirus outbreak affecting the southeast Queensland region. The virus is highly contagious and vaccination is crucial. Signs for dog owners to look out for include severe bloody diarrhea, vomiting, lethargy and weakness, loss of appetite, and fever. Other canine news, and Queensland has been named the worst state for dog attacks on postal workers. The Brisbane suburbs of Darra and Stafford are named as being particularly bad, and Australia Post says it's the smaller dogs that are the most aggressive. In other news, One Nation politician Pauline Hanson sent Brisbane City Councillor Emily Kim a legal letter demanding Kim issue a public apology for calling the One Nation party racist in an election campaign email. I can see why Pauline would be upset. I mean, she and her party are clearly not racist.
I believe we are in danger of being swamped by Asians.
Islam is a disease. We need to vaccinate ourselves against that.
The Federal Court has just ruled Senator Pauline Hanson breached the Racial Discrimination Act.
Anyway, Hanson's letter demanded Councillor Kim issue an apology by way of a half-page advertisement in the Courier Mail and the Australian, which would cost around $30,000 each, or an official complaint would be lodged to the Queensland Ombudsman and the Australian Civil Rights Commissioner. But the only reason this story made it to this update is Councillor Kim's response. The councillor, a former powerlifter, has been quoted as saying Hanson should stop being a snowflake, and then extending an invitation to Hanson to pop on down to Callumvale. I'll shout her a bubble tea. I actually live in Councillor Kim's ward, and if you want to see Australian multiculturalism working beautifully, then come on over. Best kebabs in Brisbane, and some of the best Chinese food as well. It's probably inevitable that every one of these updates for the next 8 years is going to have something Olympics related, and this one is no exception. One of the now Premier David Crisafulli's pre-election promises was that there would be a 100-day review into Olympics and Paralympics venues, and that there would be no new stadia built.
I have every faith that things will work, and I do believe we have time, and I've said this to you privately and publicly, but when Sydney were awarded the Games, it was 1993, so it was 7 years. We still have time. We don't want to waste any more of it. I'm asking for 100 days, and in 100 days, you'll have a plan that will create that generational infrastructure, and it will be a turning point, not just for Brisbane, not just for the southeast, but for the state.
The state government have made it clear that Cusack and Victoria Park would not be options, but Brisbane City Council Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner has said that all options must be considered. The tug-o-war over Olympic venues is something that the Brisbane Channel will be covering closely. But one thing that Brisbane City Council is already working on is ensuring that Brisbane Story Bridge plays a pivotal role in the Games. A committee has been assembled to plan restorative works on the bridge, which will be a mammoth task requiring funding from all levels of government. The committee will be chaired by Nigel Charmier. Nigel Charmier, who also oversaw restoration on City Hall and the recent refurbishment of Anzac Square. But it's some of Brisbane's other bridges that have made this month's update as well. The Infrastructure Sustainability Council is an organisation established to ensure infrastructure delivers social, cultural, environmental and economic benefit. And the Kangaroo Point Bridge has become the first Brisbane City Council project to receive an excellent rating in the Infrastructure Sustainability Council's design rating scheme. The rating recognises the bridge's use of renewable energy, employment of local suppliers, and inclusion of innovative technology. A little down the river, the Breakfast Creek Bridge was awarded Project of the Year and won in the Construction and Engineering category of the National 2024 Project Management Achievement Awards. One pretty cool infrastructure project you probably haven't heard about is the redevelopment of a former coal-powered electricity plant into a clean energy hub in Ipswich. The 250 megawatt 2-hour Swanbank battery is being developed by Queensland government-owned renewables outfit CleanCo. The Swanbank Battery Stage 1, which was funded with $330 million from the Labor government's Queensland Renewable Energy and Hydrogen Jobs Fund, is ready to install on the site. At least that was funded with money that was budgeted for and allocated, unlike the new police station at Stones Corner, where a 15-year lease was signed at a cost of $116 million when it had not been allocated any funding source. That means Queensland Police has to make cuts statewide to pull together the funds to the tune of 5.6% of the entire state's budget allocations. Whoops. Fire ants starred in the last 2 monthly updates here on the Brisbane Channel, and here they are again. In Moreton Bay, 2 fire ant nests were discovered outside the Fire Ant Eradication Program's containment boundary. Even more concerning are growing infestations along the Logan River. The reason it's so concerning is that in the case of flooding, fire ants clump together to form rafts that not only protect the colony's queen and her eggs, but allow the entire colony to float with the flow and spread to an area far from where they started. If not dealt with decisively, advocates from the Invasive Species Council and the Australia Institute put the financial cost of allowing them to spread in the billions each year. Well, that was a mammoth update. If you really appreciated anything in there, then you can say thanks by buying me a coffee, or you could become a member of the Brisbane Channel to support the channel longer term. But apart from that, thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.